Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology podcast featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He is the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you, like our gold supporter, the 7th Annual Super Brain Summit at Bradley University, and our silver supporter, Mind Media. Join us at the 7th Annual Super Brain Summit at Bradley University Center for Collaborative Brain Research. It's featuring speaker Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor. She's the author of The Grieving Brain, The Surprising Science of How We Learn from Our Love and Loss. If you want to get more information regarding registration, contact Gwen Hoarter. She's at GHOWARTER at bradley.edu or call her at 309-677-3900. If you want more information regarding programming, you can contact Dr. Lori Russell Chapin herself at 309-677-3186 or email lar@bradley.edu. Mindmedia.com. Get the latest EEG and neurofeedback technology from mindmedia.com. Their semi-dry sensor cap is a wonder to see, and their EEG amplifiers have been trusted in the field for decades. Their neurofeedback and QEEG courses will get you up to speed in no time. Visit mindmedia.com now.
So, I'd like to focus on a paper that we just published.
Okay, great.
A case of intractable epilepsy, and she started out as a very young child with some strabismus, and was taught some tennis to help with her eye coordination, and she really liked tennis, but she started basically to decline, and that the story kicks in at that point. But we've published this as a case study. Dr. Turner, Rusty Turner, Robert Turner, MD, epileptologist.
Great piano player.
Yes, and former head of a level 5 epilepsy center, MUSC. So he's a major figure in epilepsy treatment, and he was involved in the case. Sue Wilson, Vieta Wilson, who is a sports psychologist. She's well known in the field. She's Sister Sue to me. I'm Brother Jay to her, and we're both at retirement age and kind of poking at each other about it. But she was involved in the case because she was involved in the tennis end of this and supporting the tennis end of it. And then the mother was involved because obviously some of this was done at a distance. They moved over to Barcelona, and Linda Walker was involved in it because she supervised it online from Michigan to Barcelona. So she and I was involved in it because of looking at the EEG and kind of designing the intervention that ended up making it all kind of click. So it's an interesting case because not only is she seizure free, which is obviously the end goal, and medication free, but she's also absolutely excelled in life. She just graduated Dean's List and a tennis scholarship at a Division I university in the United States. University credits, that's tough enough.
Not too shabby. That's not too shabby.
And getting Dean's List on that and doing that well. You were an athlete. How much time is taken away from your day when you're in the university for your sport? I mean, the amount of time for workouts and it's substantial. It's like a side job. it's a side job on top of your university studies, and
You're paid less than minimum wage. Well, not
well,
anymore, NIL, but
but she went through all of that and graduated and is excelling in life. So, um, starting as a young girl who declined and declined and then went into intractable epilepsy, and the doctors were suggesting they wanted to cut off a big portion of her right temporal lobe to potentially heroically try to stop the seizures that weren't able to be stopped with medication. So I'd like to present a little bit about that case. Um, what we basically have is the paper. This is published in NeuroRegulation and uh, intractable epilepsy controlled by neurofeedback. They tried other adjunctive treatments as well, but basically neurofeedback was the thing that made this all work. And I described the co-authors already, but this is basically kicks into the paper in very great detail, little bit by little bit by little bit. But this is the first EEG, and this actually happened when she was only 11 years old, and she was in the U.S. still, and she was having some attentional problems, and they went to a person who sent their EEG actually to my company, and we provided an EEG QEG report back to the therapist, who didn't share the report with the family, but merely designed the neurofeedback protocol based on it. And in the report, the doctor points out the temporal spikes and the beta spindles in the EEG. This is an abnormal EEG, and there's spikes coming out of the temporal lobe. This is the uh, left temporal. T5 is the old nomenclature, modified nomenclature, or 1010 nomenclature. This is the P7. It's a left parietal temporal junction. And this is an abnormal finding, and it wasn't acted on in proper manner, unfortunately. They ended up having some benefit, and the family business and everything took them overseas. And this is the spectra of the EEG that we ended up analyzing. You can see the beta spindles up front, and the left temporal lobe has these slow features in it, and the transients are best seen as the transients in the EEG. They average out, they don't average up. But they basically moved overseas. This EEG we actually have as a full EEG, and let's pop this open. So um, they they had actually had her start to be diagnosed as a temporal lobe epileptic. She was having intractable seizures after they moved overseas, and the doctors basically suggested that the meds weren't stopping it. And this is an example of the kind of finding you can see in the left temporal area, sharper and slower transients that are happening. But that's a little, minor thing. You can see the rhythmic slow, the slow rhythmicity suggesting it's coming out of the limbic system. And as we continue into this, it starts to act up a little bit, but she's going to end up having a complete seizure. Now, you could see that it all started, the bad actor, the ringleader, the trigger point that called the gang together to all act out was this left temporal lobe area. And her aura was intestinal discomfort, which suggests that the insula was involved with the source of this. And so the discharge itself, once it gets going, it's largest on the right side, which is actually the healthy side. It's the side that the doctors were going to cut out because it's where the obvious discharge happens. But the fatigued hemisphere on the left is actually the bad actor. This is just the dramatic side. And if you follow this out, you'll see that the right side fatigues out and then the left side is still going. So this is a left temporal focus. And when you see the pattern, basically in phase, and then out of phase at CZ, that pattern usually has a source that is
image.
Do you see the image?
Yeah.
The red.
Yep, sure do.
The insula is this crescent-shaped, deeply. It's insulated. It's got a cover. It's buried down into the brain, and it's got the operculum overlying it, the lateral frontal area, and the temporal lobe covers the back portion of it. And the back portion of this, the Sylvian fissure that goes down into it, and the insula, posterior aspect of the insula, in fact, innervate the smooth muscles of the viscera. So when she has the discharge starting in the left temporal lobe, the discomfort that she feels in the abdomen, the intestinal distress, basically, is because of the discharges that are happening in this cortical location. And then once this side starts to fire, we end up with this side kicking in as well. And this has not just the posterior, it's got the entire insula and temporal lobe area involved in a bit of the body area, the physical seizure itself, the motor aspect of it. So
join us at the 7th Annual Super Brain Summit at Bradley University Center for Collaborative Brain Research. It's featuring speaker Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor. She's the author of The Grieving Brain, The Surprising Science of How We Learn from Our Love and Loss. If you want to get more information regarding registration, contact Gwen Hoarter. She's at GHOWARTER at bradley.edu or call her at 309-677-3900. If you want more information regarding programming, you can contact Dr. Lori Russell Chapin herself at 309-677-3186 or email lar@bradley.edu.
These source analyses basically allowed us to design the intervention to try to address the discharges by going from CZ to the left temporal area and suppressing the discharge frequencies and training up the SMR band to try to stop seizures. Now, that's a classic. Sturman's work was SMR training. The only difference between just training SMR centrally, which was his approach, and this is that we have, you can put an electrode at CZ, for instance, which could train SMR there, but you have to have 2 electrodes on for your amp to work. So a second electrode could go to a reference point the ear or something, and you could train SMR as CZ. But if we put the second electrode in the discharge, which happens to be out of phase to CZ, you get good size voltage and you get to be operantly suppressing the discharge itself. So designing that intervention, they had tried a whole bunch of other approaches, and they quite often were oriented to training on the right side because of the size of the discharge on the right side when it happens. But finally they got data sent to me. I looked at this and said, well, the bad actor is not on the right; it's on the left, and this, given the source analysis, it explains her aura, and as such, this is the little. I don't know if you can see the picture of her.
It's a little it's blocked with that little square, but if you send me the picture, I can pop it in later.
Yeah, that little square is going to be a blank spot for all of this. It had to do with the disconnect and reconnect.
Yeah, no problem. We're good. We're good.
Anyway, this is her and her neurofeedback sessions before she. I think it's instructive to actually flip through this, even if you've heard the story.
Sure.
Because it goes through literally in incredibly good detail, clinical observations, what's going on with her treatment, and how things are in her life, how many seizures, what she's doing in tennis, and so forth. So it's an interesting kind of 3 tracks side by side. But this is the first EEG, and it showed spikes in the temporal lobe area and beta spindles frontally. And this was before they had gone over to Europe, when she was receiving treatment for apparent ADD. You have to realize that spikes are present in ADD, for instance, a quarter of the time. And beta spindles are a variant of ADD that requires a different kind of medication and stimulant. So they did receive treatment. You can see the beta spindle, and at some point, the family ended up moving over to Barcelona. And when she started to actually have seizures, they were observed to be these big discharges on the right-hand side. And as I pointed out earlier, these are triggered by the left side in a much more subtle feature. And they're persisting on the left side after the big discharge ends. But the physicians who were doing the proposed surgery for her were going to be cutting off her right temporal lobe, and that's where this big voltage is. But it's not what's causing the discharges. It's all being triggered here on the left. This is the spectra of the piece before the discharge. You can see the abnormality on the left side. When the discharge happens, it's still abnormal on the left, but the big voltages are happening on the right. And they were proposing a resection of the right temporal. This is her EEG clean after treatment. And she basically is free of seizures and free of meds. This is sleep deprived. They had traveled internationally, and she was touring through schools to see where she might get a tennis scholarship, and had to declare her epilepsy in medical history as part of those schools. So anyway, this is her seizure-free, medication-free, a little bit of finding in the temporal lobe area still, but she ended up doing continued neurofeedback for peak performance. And anyway, that's the publication. It's got EEG sample in it, and the full story in extreme detail. It's a case study which doesn't carry as much weight as a case series. So we're piecing together more cases because, as you know, there are other individual cases that we've got that are seizure-free, medication-free, and we're going to try to piece together a case series and get that published in a neurology.
What does it take to do a series, Jay?
Well, you have to end up having a bunch of patients, not just one. And generally, it's not like 2 or 3. A case series, you have to have a cluster of clients to kind of demonstrate that the technique, the range of variability on the technique or the range of applications.
Is there a magic N or number?
If you're going to do group analysis, the magic numbers do exist, but for a case series for clinical treatment, there isn't really a magic number. 6 to 10, somewhere in that range, is enough to start to get attention. If you have 25, 30, it's irrefutable. But at this point, given the very few practitioners who actually work with people with epilepsy and that do neurofeedback, and cases that would have enough documentation, a proper diagnosis by an epileptologist or neurologist, good EEG data to track, and they'd have to be good cases to add into the case report. It's not just the rumor of so and so had a case that got better, and that we'd have to have case detail. So, and we've got about 6 now, so it's not it's the difficulty of getting the writing together and so forth. It took over a year for this to get pieced together. It's just it's group editing, and we actually hired an editor to go through and touch it up as well. For submissions, they want 2,500, 3,000 words max, and we started out around 8,000. So it had to be cut down dramatically in order to be something that would be publishable. But the ability to take a client who's being told that they have to remove part of their brain in order for them to end up having a half a chance only of being seizure free, because brain surgery has only about a 50% success. And that's unfortunate. The little focal lumpectomies that they do, where they take a little piece instead of the anterior third or half of the temporal lobe, to actually try to pick the little piece that might be problematic, their success rate drops down. But they will offer to go in and take another little piece. But there's a risk with every surgery. So. And neurofeedback can be done. It's a non-invasive procedure, and it can be done while you're considering the surgery, and perhaps totally avoid the need for it, as in this case. And I think it's also important to note that this isn't just somebody who no longer has epileptic convulsive seizures. This is somebody who has peak performance, optimized life. It isn't just the absence of pathology. This is the optimization of function using the same techniques. If something is significantly wrong, neurofeedback helps to right it. But, if you're if you're going for high performance, you have to do tune-ups, and tune-ups are extremely common. If you get into the high performance cars and stuff, I mean, they have people that have customized programming on computers for their tuning. So the higher the level of performance demanded, the higher the level of training and control you need. So you can transcend the pathology, but you can optimize the function. And I think that the optimizing of the function ends up being the end goal here, not just stepping away from the pathology, although that's a huge piece in and of itself.
All right, Jay, see you next week, buddy.
Next week. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you, like our gold supporter, the 7th Annual Super Brain Summit at Bradley University, and our silver supporter, Mind Media. Join us at the 7th Annual Super Brain Summit at Bradley University Center for Collaborative Brain Research. It's featuring speaker Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor. She's the author of The Grieving Brain, The Surprising Science of How We Learn from Our Love and Loss. If you want to get more information regarding registration, contact Gwen Hoarter. She's at GHOWARTER@bradley.edu, or call her at 309-677-3900. If you want more information regarding programming, you can contact Dr. Lori Russell Chapin herself at 309-677-3186 or email lar@bradley.edu. Mindmedia.com. Get the latest EEG and neurofeedback technology from mindmedia.com. Their semi-dry sensor cap is a wonder to see, and their EEG amplifiers have been trusted in the field for decades. Their neurofeedback and QEEG courses will get you up to speed in no time. Visit mindmedia.com now.